Hello, you writing rebels. I'm Kristen McTiernan, and you're on Nonsense Free Kristen. A common theme I find with my clients and just writers online is that they would like their book eventually to be turned into a movie. They love to write, the writing is important to them, and they want readers. Very important. But when you dig down, what they really want, what they actually want, is to see actors playing their characters on the screen. They don't want to get into that Hollywood world, and so they want to kind of take the back door to get into Hollywood by writing a book. Backdoor. Giggity. Today I'm talking to an independently published author who kind of took the opposite tack, and he started with Hollywood. He decided he wanted to be a screenwriter first. Cary DiCristina is a Gen X screenwriter who spent 15 years in Hollywood chasing the dream, meeting with producers, meeting with directors, meeting with Netflix, and he spent that time getting this close to having his script optioned. These are the kind of rooms that you and I will never get into. However, after all of those years and nothing really coming of it, he finally said, enough. But I still have this story, and it's a good one. What do I do with it? What he did with it is he decided to do what we are all doing and independently publish his screenplay as a novel, which is now Redemption Window, available on Amazon. Now, as I've mentioned before, there are a lot of differences between writing for a novel and writing for the screen, and that's part of what Cary and I talk about today. So if you're interested in potentially turning your existing novel into a screenplay, or just curious about what the differences between the two are and how you might straddle both worlds, I think you'll enjoy this interview. I know I certainly did. Let's get started. All right, so let's kick this off. Easiest question ever. Who are you and what do you do?
Okay. I used to be in IT like years ago, back when it first started. We're talking about like when people were getting paid like $200 to write HTML to, $200 an hour, crazy stuff like that. And it was kind of a trade-off. I had always wanted to be a filmmaker since I was 10 years old, wanted to be a filmmaker. And I just wasn't the Hollywood type. And I was someone who was more interested in the story. I was someone who was more interested, honestly, in the script. And that was something that I think surprised me because most of the people I knew who were into film were like, it's special effects and that sort of thing. For me, it was always the drama, the tension, or the comedy and the tension. And I felt that you did that either with dialogue or you did that with dialogue that was juxtaposed with the action. Right. So I'm doing something opposite from what I'm saying, which I think is a great sort of human existence thing. Right. We all do that. We say one thing and we do another. So I got into IT because I could get into the creative side of it. And I felt like this scratched the itch. After the implosion of the dot-com era, I was in the process of getting married and I had just ended a contract with Turner and had delivered two very high profile projects for them. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I had been doing it for about 5 or 6 years. And I think I'd had maybe one vacation in that whole time. I was that guy who worked, I just ground. I loved it. I worked all the time. And on Saturdays for fun, like I do everybody's timesheets. Like, isn't this great? This is awesome. And then after a couple of dot-com implosions where you're sitting there thinking, oh, wow, all these companies do is like put a vowel in front of their name, and then they get a 50% jump in their value. I just was like, what is this all for? This isn't really what I wanted to do. So I decided to write a screenplay because I was between jobs and it was the beginning of a recession. And I treated it like a job. I was like, okay, I'm up at this time every day and I'm going to get this many pages done and I'm really going to focus on it. And so I got into a friend of a friend who was in the industry. And what he said was, I don't want to blow smoke up your ass, but he's like, I think you've got talent and you should do this if you can afford this. What I heard was, oh boy, I'm going to make a ton of money doing this and I'm going to be super successful. And it might take a little bit longer than I think, but it's your dream. How do you say no? Right. So I guess this would have been midlife crisis number one. I had it early in my late 20s. So I did that for a long time. And what ended up happening is because my wife is like, she can do corporate, man. That's her thing. She's great at it. And it was in high finance. And so for her, I mean, it was just kind of like this perfect match. It was like she was out working, I was living off my savings. And then as this all kind of evolved, it was like, oh, by the way, I'm pregnant. And I was like, wait, what? And so we have the first kid. You go through all the things in life. You have kids, your parents get sick. And in the meantime, I'm still grinding at this because I keep doubling down. I'm like the worst gambling addict that there is. Okay, this project didn't sell, but this next one's going to do it. I know this is going to be perfect. And, I got close. I mean, there were a couple where it was like I got screwed over because I trusted the wrong people. And of course, you always have those friends who are like, you should have had an agent and you should have had a manager. I can't believe you didn't do this. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, nobody signed up for it. So I'm kind of doing this all on my own. I realize I am just fire hosing you with like this crazy bio, but long story, already too long. We come to COVID and I had been trying to actually produce one of my later screenplays as an independent film. COVID happens, everything kind of falls apart. I write a pilot and nobody will look at it. And I just was like, I got to have something. And so I decided to take that pilot and turn it into a novel. And that was an interesting process because I thought it was going to be really quick and easy. And it turned out to be probably on par, if not a little bit more difficult than if I had just written a novel from the beginning.
Absolutely.
So I don't
And
know. I don't know if you can cut that down to make that sound
no, that's
interesting or
easy.
fascinating.
Easy money. So, and that I want to really touch on that because a lot of times when people speak to me, oh, I'm writing a book, what they say is they don't actually care about writing a book. They want it to be a miniseries or they want it to be a movie. What they actually want is to see their work on the screen. The book they feel is just a stepping stone to that. And in some cases that can pan out. You had the opposite tack. So you were writing screenplays and I'm assuming these are feature films, and did you do TV as well?
Yeah. As I tried to pitch this as a novel, I kind of fell into that Hollywood trope of, okay, I'll give you what the pitch is, and then I'll tell you what the log line is, and then I'll tell you what the book is about. So the pitch was it's Homeland meets Succession because that's how you got to do it in Hollywood. Cut to the chase. This is what you can make your money on. But what it's really about is the fight over a hedge fund. And then what it's really, really about is very Generation X, which is what do you do when that thing you have wanted your whole life, you realize you don't want it anymore. And what was great about this experience, and this is something that there was a big stumbling block for me in the process, was like you said, I think there was a part of me that was still writing it like it was a film, even though it was a book. And it wasn't until I had my latest and greatest editor, who's my wife, read it. And she was just like, look, first of all, I don't care about any of the characters. And then she said, and it reads like a screenplay. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? It's not formatted the same. It's all this sort of stuff. And it was then that something occurred to me. I was like, I have these characters in my head, but I still haven't given that to the reader. And the best thing I can do now is I get to go inside my character's head. And that is something that I never did before. I mean, you can do it in film and in TV, but it's a voiceover. And it's usually this sign of really bad writing, right? It's either the sign of bad testing or, someone in marketing doesn't get it, or we had to cut our shoot days. And so we gotta cover it over with voiceover. And I realize for a lot of your audience, I'm probably like not the writer guy because everything I talk about is in sort of like film parlance. But I think that honestly, especially today, film and books and just storytelling in general are so intertwined that it's really difficult now to sort of say it's just a book and this is all it is, because you can take the most unfilmable book and film it, and you can take any idea and turn it into a book. And I mean, I had always been in creative writing. I had written short stories. I had done the whole thing. And for me, my screenplays were much more prose. So when people read them, it was funny. I either got one of two responses. Oh, you must want to direct because you're telling us so much about what's going on. Or it was just sort of, I came at it with trying to wordsmith. I wanted it to be enjoyable for the reader. It wasn't just to sell the idea. So for me, I think it was an easy move over to novels. Plus, I mean, you look, Elmore Leonard he's fantastic. Like Elmore Leonard, Michael Crichton, a lot of these guys, and I mean, to a certain extent, like Larry McMurtry, I had all these guys kind of in my head. And it was, I want to write a book that I don't get to read anymore.
Now, I do want to talk about the differences. So when we talk about, so say we're writing a feature screenplay and it's got the same story beats as a novel. We'll say a novel for adults, genre novel, 70,000 words, so on the shorter side.
Right.
What in the writing process of those two things, what are the key differences and why are those differences there?
I think it depends on, well, first of all, you can do the great thing about the beats is when you're writing fiction, you are not locked into the visual medium. So whenever you're writing a screenplay is almost like copywriting mixed with an information architecture document. I don't know if you're familiar with those or not. So it's a little bit more technical. And the other thing about a screenplay is it's a stake in the ground. And it's basically you are communicating to various teams what you're looking for. So it's really more of a design document that has to read like a short story. It's a crazy amount. A really successful screenplay is going to read like a story and you're going to get the formatting and it's pretty easy, but it's really about communicating essential information to the team. Whereas in a novel, you can do it any way you want. You can jump back and forth in time within the same sentence. You can do a lot. And what's great about writing fiction is you can create a sense of feeling and you can give a sense of, I don't know how, what Kierkegaard call it. Oh God, just the wholeness of everything. I forgot what the technical term is or psychological term is. Whereas in film, you got to hope you got the right director of photography, you got the right director, and that like the editor didn't screw it up, and that the color grading is on point. And even when you do that, it never quite matches what's in your head. That's the beauty of a book is it allows you to fill in your own cast, you can fill in your own set, and you don't have to worry about distracting details that may catch you up in a visual medium.
Or whether the budget for what you're describing is feasible.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, it is an independent film. It's the perfect auteur vehicle for the independent filmmaker.
Mhm.
It's like, see, now I've got a budget and I can just put it on the page.
Yeah, The Critical Drinker, I assume you've heard of him on YouTube.
I am a big fan.
So
We have the same
he
beard.
came out with his film, and a lot of people enjoyed dunking on him because he's a movie critic, and his movie or his short film was not well received. And he heard that criticism and he came out. He said, "Look, when you're making a movie, there's three different movies. There's what's in the screenplay. There's what he wrote. Then there's what is shot, and then there's the final edited product." And I guess obviously the final edited project was not what he wrote. It's not what he wanted, but with the funding, even with the crowdfunding, what was in his head just couldn't come to fruition. And I think he's a novelist by trade before he started on YouTube. And I think a lot of novelists don't think about that because a lot of times they're like, "Oh, I would never sell my work to Netflix. If I'm gonna have my movie made, I'm gonna be, it's gonna be me doing it." It's like I'm not in filmmaking. They don't understand how many moving parts, how expensive it is, and how complicated it is to get that story onto a screen.
Oh, I think you just put the nail on the head, which is what you're seeing on screen is a compromise. No matter how much financial you are, and how much power you may have in the industry. At the end of the day, unless you're Stanley Kubrick and Steve Ross is just backing up the old Warner Brothers truck with big stacks of money, what you're seeing on screen is a compromise. And what you're reading in a book, and I realize there will be compromise in a book, especially if you're working with a traditional publisher. But I also know that if you get famous or successful enough, traditional publishers start to loosen those puppet strings quite a bit in terms of what they're going to require or ask you to do. And so for the novel, it really is much more of your statement. This is what I wanted you to see. This is what I wanted you to experience. So yeah, I think that's actually a really good point, which is, and let's face it, it's so much easier in terms of production. I mean, the most fun that I had, whether it was a screenplay, but especially as a novel, is just sitting down and you get to play God and you get to, and it's very addictive. And you almost have to go through like a little halfway house step. And but I don't know if this is true for you, but for me, when I really get into writing and getting it going, and the characters are talking to me and they're going through me and the whole deal, it's like I kind of have to go sit down someplace else or go do something that doesn't involve anything, just to think about the fact, okay, I'm going to go into a normal situation where I've got kids and I got a wife, and they aren't going to do what I tell them to do or what I think they should do. You know what I'm saying? And it's just sort of like, I have to get used to the fact that the whole world doesn't rely on whatever my idea is. And that's it's kind of interesting. I mean, I totally get it. It's addictive.
Hmm. Now, you said earlier that the book you're writing is a book you want to read, but it isn't being written anymore. So, what exactly isn't being written, and why do you think that is? Why is there that hole in the market now?
Okay, so I realize I'm going to kind of contradict myself with this first point, but almost my wife is a huge reader. She reads, she could put away like 5 books in a week, that kind of thing. And so I see a lot of books come through the house, right? I mean, she still has like her library card and uses it, and there's still certain authors she will buy and all that kind of stuff. But as I was looking at fiction when we were first dating, she and I would sometimes share the same books because we would be interested. So like Cold Mountain, we both read, The Life of Pi, we both read. You know, these were really interesting fictional books. And then I don't know, like around 2005, 2006, everything became like chick lit. And if it wasn't chick lit and it was serious, so it was on the New York Times bestseller list. So we know it's great stuff. They're so busy hitting you over the head with some kind of message. And it was just like, can we write a story where there's like a guy in it and we don't have to have this whole other like you just see the tropes coming a mile away. And it got to the point, it's so funny. I mean, I'm looking at my wife's stack of books. We have like books in the corner of our rooms. Like they're just we don't even bother with like bookshelves and all that kind of crap. And I would pick out the books where it was a man who had written it. And I was like, oh, I know this guy's gay. Like, I mean, that's it, right? Because how else is this guy getting to publishing? That's what it turned into. And so when I read that article in the Free Press, I can't remember who the author was. It was about a year and a half ago. And he was this author, and he was just like, I'm going to blow the whistle on what's going on in traditional publishing. He's like, if you're a white straight male, you're not getting published. And it's like, I don't need to read a book about white straight men. I don't care. I just want to read a story where my concern was the story. It wasn't about a message. I don't know why people refuse to listen to Daryl Ebzanik when he said this, but he's like, you want to send a message, go to Western Union. I realize very dated for all you youngsters out there, but I mean, it's really true. And it's just like, oh my God, I want to read something where I care and I want to keep turning the page and I don't want to be lectured. And so that's what I did. And the reason that I say it's kind of ironic is because when I wrote the pilot, I was cognizant of the fact that if you're writing a drama, you're probably gonna have to have a female protagonist or at least a strong female lead, which I always want a strong female lead in there, but I'm not saying that the story's necessarily centered on a woman. But when you're writing for TV, you have to. And so I was like, look, I'm going to have to go this way. And I was apprehensive of that as well, because it's like, hey, you're a man and you've got a penis and you can't be writing for a woman. And why would you, and it's just like, and as I was writing this, I'm writing this person as a character, and I'm really trying to do my best with what I know about women from being married for over 20 years and having a daughter who's 17 years old. And I think I've got a pretty good idea. Plus, the fact when I was the one who was raising the kids, it's like, man, I got in the middle of the craziness of like, you could see the crazy housewife stuff going on. So it's like you kind of get some insights, right? So I realize I'm I'm backpedaling on this, but it was like by the time this was becoming a novel, the characters were set and everything was kind of heavily written, or at least the archetypes were set. So it wasn't time to start changing things around. And I'm certainly not saying that if I write another novel, I mean, I will write another novel, but I don't know if it'll be in the same universe. It's not necessarily going to be the same hook. There weren't a lot of Jack Cars when I started this. And I don't know who he knew at Paramount, where he could basically put a gun to somebody's head at Simon and Schuster and then actually get his book released as is. But I was like, he's obviously seeing a need. And Simon and Schuster is obviously seeing a need in an audience. So I think things are starting to open up. But for me, I just wanted to write a good story, something close to like what Elmore Leonard did with Out of Sight, or what really I was thinking about, and your podcast with Ryan really helped me remember it, is Michael Crichton's Disclosure, which I thought was such a good. Here's a book about middle management in tech. Wow, we're all just pins and needles about this. You can't read her, but it was a great story. And he was talking about the whole problem with sexual harassment. And it was all cloaked in this crazy MacGuffin about whether or not the CD-ROM was going to fire up the right way. And I was just like, that's what I want to read. I want to read something like that.
Yeah,
I probably could have answered that in 3 seconds for you. So
I think there's this idea, and obviously it's not coming from the male authors or even the male readers, but there's this idea of, well, men don't want to read about women, so we have to trick them into reading about women. But that is not true.
Yeah,
it's never been
not
true.
at all.
A lot of the biggest male authors, Dean Koontz, Stephen King, they've had female protagonists who are not pathetic, wishy-washy women. They're strong women, and they're women that the male readers like. You have a female protagonist who originally you created her for TV because that was a requirement, but ostensibly your readership is probably going to be highly male, but that's okay because male readers don't hate female protagonists. They hate Mary Sue's. So when you're writing an authentic female perspective, obviously you're a father of a teenage girl. That's always a fun age. You've been married for all this time. What would you say from a male readership perspective will like hit that alarm where you're like, okay, I'm reading a girl boss or I'm reading a Mary Sue, the inauthenticity of the female character that kind of sets the teeth on edge?
You know what? I don't even have a problem with the female boss. I don't have a problem with the boss girl as long as the character makes sense, as long as the character is realistic. Quick sidebar. When I was schlepping out to LA, I mean, one of the projects I almost sold was a project called Wingman. And it was all about this guy who basically was a wingman. And I pitched it to this producer who was like, oh my God, my partner tried to get this set up at Universal. How did you deal with the fact that the wingman is an asshole? I had come up with the idea like in seconds before when I was sitting in the guy's couch waiting on my bottled water that took 20 minutes to get delivered to me. And I just was like pulling stuff out of my ass. And I was like, oh, well, you've got to have a cock block. And they were like, and he was like, oh, tell me more. What's a cock block? And I was like, dude, I was like, it's Taming of the Shrew. I was like, Wingman is just a reversal of Taming of the Shrew. This is what it is, right? And here's the thing. Katrina's a fantastic character. Every guy wants a Katrina, but they also want to be the guy who tames the Katrina. And it's not it's not about dominance. It's about the dance. It's the dance between men and women that make it so interesting. When you look at something like the Sandman, right? And you look at the characters that Hammett created for Nick and Nora Charles, they both bring their own sensibilities and their own unique characteristics to this partnership. That's what I liked. That's the thing, right? It's bullshit when you're reading a book and the female knows everything and the guy is just a simp and the guy's just sort of sitting and every guy's an idiot. What more do you need to do than look at the way Madison Avenue treats men? Back in the 80s, it was great because all men were Rodney Dangerfield or they were Crockett and Tubbs, right? So at least you had a spectrum, right? Now men are like these dumb simps who don't know how to use a washing machine. And oh, if only my wife were here to tell me how to, I just don't know how to do this. Tell her to take me away. It's like, come on, this is such bullshit. And I don't know who we're feeding with this idea, but I agree very much with your main argument, which is media is future. And we are, whether we know it or not, we're creating in the zeitgeist this perception of men and women and the way they interact and the way it's now expected. I see it now with my daughter. I mean, what's great about my daughter is, and I'll just go ahead and tap myself on the shoulder for this. Because I didn't carry her, I didn't have that crazy flux of hormones when she was running around where it's like, oh my God, I've got to, she's an extension of me. I have to protect her. I was just like, look, you got to figure this shit out, And I remember she was a tiny kid. She was at the playground. And of course, I'm sitting here trying to write while she's off actually being a kid in the playground. Don't tell defects. But so this kindly older woman comes over to me and she's like, you know what your daughter's doing? Because she was just sort of standing off in the corner by herself and she wasn't doing anything. And I was thinking, oh God, this kid's gonna be antisocial. This is all my fault. She's like, no, your kid she's a strategist. She's evaluating what she wants to do. And I don't know if it would have been the same if my wife had been the one who raised her, but I know that my daughter is very self-assured and is very on top of her stuff and very independent and does not get into drama. Like all her friends start trying to stir up drama. And she's just like, I'm out. I don't do this. And I'm hoping that has something to do with my effect on her. But I'm seeing this where girls are getting this crazy message that to have value, well, you've got to be the smartest person in the room, the strongest person in the room. I read your piece this morning. I totally agree. Okay, so I'm glad that you watched Cheryl Ladd when you were a kid. I did too. But I will tell you that in my fantasy, when I get tackled by Cheryl Ladd, it's a whole different thing than what you think it's going to be, when she apparently puts the cuffs on you. It's just like, and especially where I live in the 85 corridor, super blue, and everybody just lives in this bubble where it amazes me. People have no concept of the world outside of their social media, out of their echo chamber, and they are completely blissfully aware of the fact that they are constantly reinforcing their echo chamber every day. It's just like, and I say this as someone who's like, I could be in my own echo chamber. I could be in my own crazy ass male dungeon where I've got all these Joe Rogan type thoughts. Because, I've definitely been portrayed that way.
So probably.
But I'd like to argue, at least I'm willing to argue that, yeah, I could be screwed up here, but the other team isn't arguing at all. They just assume they're right. And they're going to tell you all the time that they're right. And I think that comes out in literature.
It's a difference. And when you mentioned the way that you raised your daughter, you didn't hover. You didn't have that constant neuroticism. Right. And I think a lot of the kids right now who are the younger Zoomers and then alphas, they were raised by extremely neurotic, hovering millennials. You're Gen X, and yeah, you're male, so that helps too. So you don't have that thing where you got to protect them from falling. It's like, oh, let her fall down a few times, she'll learn.
Right. Yeah.
Men are better about that than we are. But there's this neuroticism where you have this hovering woman over you with the younger generation who doesn't let you experience, that standing back and observing. No, 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 no. I'm going to tell you how things are, and I'm going to protect
Right.
every second of your day. And so then we have these people who are creators now, and they're, millennials. So I'm the eldest millennial, so I just barely missed Gen X. So I'm kind of more,
Oh no, you're in. Did we not
yeah.
tell you? We had
I'm
a
an
meeting.
honorary member.
Yeah, you're honorary. Yes. I'm
They've
gonna
got
need you to wear more plaid, but yeah, I mean, you got the
Oh, I
idea.
have the plaid. My husband
Okay.
doesn't like it. He's like, people will think we have alternative lifestyles. So, okay. So you've got these younger millennials, and they're writing the world as they would like it to be because they've never been punched in the face. They can't even
Right.
imagine what that would feel like. They've never gotten lost on a city street and had to ask for directions and had a horrible man in Boston give them wrong directions that led them to a stinky fish-filled dumpster because Bostonians are pricks. They've never had these because they've always had the Google Maps or whatever. And so there's just a lack of experience to the point where Gen Zs, like I think it was a picture of a house party, it was a video, a music video or something. They were like, did y'all actually do this? Or is this just something from TV? It's like, no, bitch, we had parties. We had house parties. You think that's fake? Because they don't have them at all. And so these are people who have no lives, whose only life is this. And so they can't write because they don't live. And I think that a lot of the elder millennials, the Gen X, like, we have to do this creating because these weird little shits, what we're creating is the only way that they'll know what real life is.
No, you totally, once again, I can see why you're probably a great editor and I'm probably gonna need to hire you for my next book. But there's something really to that, which is conflict. This next generation avoids it like the plague. And I mean, from everything, I mean, like, I'm going to ask you permission to go outside and do something, or I'm waiting for my kids to say, hey, dad, can we go outside and toilet paper somebody's house? Or, hey, dad, can I sneak out later on tonight and go to a keg party and not tell you? I'm just sort of like, I need you to know when you're going to take these steps. And here's the kicker. You're going to take these steps and I'm still going to get pissed. But these are the roles we're playing. And there's an important reason for us to play these roles. And I think you definitely don't see it in fiction. When going back to my daughter. So my son won't read. I mean, he's just like, I mean, he's a total kid. He's a total guy, right? I mean, he's like, he's playing Madden 24 hours a day. And I'm hoping that in the next couple of years, it'll kind of kick in. But even with movies, it's like, but to go back to my daughter wouldn't read anything with any conflict. Like she'd read these crazy books like called like Cupcake Diaries or something. I don't know what the hell it was. Some crazy ass book where it was like nothing happens. There's no storyline. It's like, it's what self-publishing was 15 years ago. You know, you'd get that guy who was going to publish his memoirs and he did it himself. And it was just this long, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, the end. And it's like, I see that happening now in everything. In you name it, that's what we're getting. And we desperately need some Trey Parker coming in there and just saying, we need some therefores and we got to have some butts. And I don't care if there's pants on the butts or not, but you got to have some butts.
Absolutely. Now, shifting over into having a finished book and getting it out there, right now, you have begun serializing chapters on Substack, and this is before your publication. So what is the strategy there? What's the feedback you're getting, and how are you incorporating that into your greater publishing strategy?
Well, once again, I can sort of thank you for this, although I'm partially thanking you because I saw this guy, the guy who does Story Grid. I'm sorry, I forgot his name. But I had seen an earlier podcast with him where he talked about the importance of being able to build readership over building customers. And so then when I saw him again on your podcast, it just sort of reinforced this is the right strategy. I mean, this is what Charles Dickens did. This is how he got published was, of course, the Times of London was paying him a godly amount of money to get the rights to those chapters. But at some point they had to be free. And so as far as I'm concerned, yeah, I don't want somebody to buy my book and be like, first of all, this sucked, or this is not what I thought it was going to be, or I don't, I'm a bit of a fanatic when it comes to truth in advertising. It's like, this is what I wrote. And I want you to like this for itself. I want it to be authentic. I don't want it to, and I sure as hell don't want people like, oh, that was so cute. Or, yeah, I bought it. I didn't read it, but I bought it because you're a friend. And I knew that if I didn't buy it, I'd feel bad. So, and it's just sort of like, I want this way, I'm letting people off the hook. And I'm telling them up front, I'm like, you can read it. If it's not your cup of tea, great. Feel free to pass it along to somebody else or consider the fact you have no taste. All of these are acceptable. It's fine.
Yeah,
But,
and that's the thing about art, and a lot of people focus heavily. They're like, look, people can look at the free preview on Amazon, so you want to make sure your chapter one is awesome. But and that's good advice, to be clear. But a lot of times they'll only focus on that chapter one and thinking, well, as long as I like trick them into thinking it's a good book, then that's a sale, and a sale is a sale. But that's not how it works. And what I like about the serial model is that you can kind of track who exactly likes your book, for one, all of it. And then for two, people who, oh, well, I did like it, but then, readership drops off. Okay, well, what chapter does it drop off and why? And, the thing about the Substack model, especially, is that people will comment. Like I missed a chapter last week because my health temporarily imploded. And I had a couple of people say, hey, where are my chapters? And I'm like, holy shit, people are actually reading it. That's fantastic news. Because when somebody buys a book, that's not necessarily the case. And so, how, once it's all done, we'll say, what then? How are you planning on launching it? How are you planning on getting the word out? And are you going to be keeping what's there up on Substack when it goes out in its completed form?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I don't care if it's out there. I mean, it's 7 chapters. I've got like 60. I mean, so it's not like it's a percentage game. And to your point, yeah, I like the idea of putting it out there for free, but I'm starting to see that there is a limit. And I actually heard from a friend of mine who really was into reading these. And because I think I released like 7 chapters. And the reason I did that was within 7 chapters, I introduced all the main characters. So I kind of wanted everybody to get an idea of this is the table, it's been set, and this is these are the people we're going to be dealing with. Somebody made up a great point, which was, okay, you're sending it out every week. I'm forgetting stuff from chapter 1 by now. So it really helps. Plus, it's like if you're really into it, you want to keep going. So I think there is definitely a point where you kind of need to like cut off the spigot. And that's what I've done. I finished serializing about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And up until now, it's just sort of been hey, here's what I put up on TikTok. This is what I put up on LinkedIn. This is what I put up, whatever. And here are links to all the past chapters in case you forgot something. Just kind of keeping people refreshed and remembering where they were and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, by the time you see this, it will have been published. But we're recording this, I guess, a couple of days before the actual publishing date, which is September 30th. So by then, it's on Amazon, guys. So feel free to look up Redemption Window or go to redemptionwindow.net. And I forgot what I was going to say because I was so busy.
No, you're good. And I think you really hit on something, because the novel that I'm serializing right now, it was created specifically to be serialized. I wasn't even sure I was going to put it on Amazon, because you're right. If you're reading something on a screen, especially if it's a phone, if it's a traditional novel chapter, which can sometimes run 3 to 5,000 words, that's too much. And it's just blocks and blocks of text. Even if you add pictures, the form needs to meet the function. And so I like what you did, where it's like, okay, here's my first 7 chapters. And so that's the lead magnet. It's like, here's what the book is about. And then at the end of those 7 chapters, here's the link to buy the full book. So I think for traditional novels, whereas mine is an epistle, it's a little bit different. It's a little more screen friendly. I think that was a good plan on your part. Now, are you staying indie with your book publishing, or are you looking for representation?
No, I'm staying indie. My editors who I had out of Michigan, they were great, by the way. It was a husband and wife team.
Mhm.
So I kind of got two editors for the price of one. They had actually hooked me up to a small boutique label out of Atlanta, which is where I'm based. And at that time, they did business books and memoirs. And they were going to try and start getting into fiction. And I thought, oh, this is perfect, right? D- I'll be their test case. I'll let them test me. I don't care. I'll get a bunch of free out of this. They were bought by Simon and Schuster. Simon and Schuster is changing their business model a lot because either they're owned by VC or they're just like, we're not part of the big Paramount global world anymore. So we got to really make a lot of money. But what I found in my research was I'm going to be in the whole 20 grand. I'm going to be doing most of the work as far as marketing is concerned. They might be able to get it into a few bookstores, which is great, whatever. But oh, by the way, the royalties would be shit. So I'm doing the same amount of work. I have no control over it. They're going to tell me what to write, and my royalties are going to be shit. I was like, I don't even know where on earth this makes sense anymore.
It's like
Like,
it's not even a sales pitch. It's like, what is
it really is. I mean, you guys are going out of your way to make sure that nobody wants to do it. And I can't I don't know if it was on your podcast or if it was on Story Grid, but somebody had the demarcation line of about 500,000. They were like, if you don't have an advance of like 500 grand, they're telling you right there, they're not investing in you. They're not going to be putting any kind of marketing muscle behind you. And I can only imagine this is like music publishing where it's like, oh, you're in our stable, which basically means we just branded your ass. And we're going to put this lovely little code next to your name and we're going to charge against it. And when all is said and done, we're going to charge you for all of those lunch meetings we had where we wanted to discuss your future. And this is what it costs to bring in somebody to do the artwork for the cover. And this is what it costs to do typesetting. I was in graphic design. Like I can handle this. I mean, this isn't, I mean, I realize that for most authors, that's not their thing. But when you look at the line items and you look at what they're charging you for, most of it is for cover art and for like typesetting. I'm like, typesetting $250. What are you nuts?
Mhm.
Like Vellum, it took me maybe 2 hours to figure out how to do the formatting of the Word doc so that I could easily import it into Vellum. And I was able to switch out the style looks to the way that I wanted it. And I was like, and then it just basically generates the PDFs or the EPUBs. I'm like, this is brilliant. What, I mean, you can just put publishers out of business.
Yeah, I love
And
Vellum. It's fantastic.
yeah, so like just because I spent the money on it, I've got to show them. So like one of the things I did was I went to Moo and I had business cards made up, which is just the business, which you did the book cover, and on the back is the call to action. And it's just like I went old fashioned grind marketing. Like people I see on, like I always have five in my pocket. People I see on the street, I'm just like, hey, here, take a look at this, see what you think. I probably got about the same retention rate as if I sent out a mailer, so about 3 to 5%. But and I should apologize to your audience right now. I guess I'm not wearing my author's hat. I'm wearing my marketer's hat.
Well,
I
honestly,
feel like
most people are most interested in that because even writers who are new, they're interested, they're still learning the craft. They have craft books and they're watching dedicated craft videos like, okay, well, here's how you do a climax and here's how you do a denouement. It's like what they do, what they need to feel confident in being an author and calling themselves a writer is to sell. And that's where they don't even know where to start. And that's honestly why I always want to talk about that. It's like, okay, what's working? What are you trying? Even if it hasn't worked out yet, what spaghetti are you throwing against the wall? So people can feel like there's more out there than I have to get signed by an agent or I'm going to be working for a retail
absolutely.
photographer.
And I think that's kind of the demarcation line between, I mean, I want to say artist, and then I want to say artisan, because for me, if you're serious about your craft, you're not going to really have a problem talking about it. I mean, you can't help it. It's just sort of like, well, what have you been up to? It's like, I'm just the type of person who is like, I don't want to sit there and have the same chit chat. So if you ask me how I'm doing, I'm going to either try to wow you with some stupid joke, or or I'll just tell you. And, and so what that means is, okay, I'm working on this. And in a way, that's how I get this done is I have to socially put myself in a corner where I have no choice. You take a look at my career, I have made some disastrous choices, like really stupid. Like, I like to think that I'm somewhat intelligent, and I'm like, wow, looking back on it, I'm a dumbass. How did I do what? This is amazing. Not only is my life full of bullshit, but apparently I'm just eating it. Like I can't get enough of it. For me, this is the only way it's getting done. Is it's like I have to put myself in a corner. I have to tell people, and it's not like people are waiting at the door and they can't wait to read my book. But I made it's out loud. I'm partially extroverted. That's a promise that I made. So I have to fulfill it. I have to get it done. And so, I knew that when I started marketing this book, I was like, okay, once I started going down this road, there's no turning back. And it could be the biggest embarrassment of my life. But if that's what it is, it's what it is. I mean, I'm getting something out of it.
What advice would you have for a young man who has not written a book, not written a screenplay, but he wants to create something? He has a story, he's been sitting on it, and he wants to create. What is your advice to him?
I think it depends on what type of person you are. If you're the type of person who needs structure and you need a protocol, then I would suggest you say, okay, I have to write 20 pages. And I don't care what the 20 pages are. This is what I told a couple of classes that I was asked to lead in writing. I was like, your first draft is your vomit draft. Throw everything in you can think of. Like as you're going, just keep going and don't make the mistake of going back and reading what you've written until you're done. Just you're a shark, keep moving, get to the end. And then when it's over, then you can go back and you can start to rewrite because that's where writing happens, right? What you're doing right now is vomiting. And you need to get comfortable with vomiting and you need to get it all out. And then you start the process of actually shaping it and turning it into writing. And I think if you're someone who's structured, just say, okay, it's a job, it's a project, it has to be done and have a date. Get out a calendar and say, this is the date it has to be done. If you're more of an artist and you have to do it, then I would say, okay, if I'm sitting here hearing this message and my choice is I'm going to play Fortnite or Madden or what have you, or I could get up and put down on paper what I'm thinking of, then get your ass up and go put it on paper right now. Because I know you're a feeling person and I know that you need to sort of take advantage of, I don't want to say the muse, but you need to take advantage of that creativity when it comes. And I think this is true for whether you're an artist or an artisan. You do have to get in love with the idea of there being a structure. You have to treat this like it's a job. It's like Quentin Tarantino said. He's like, after you've written the screenplay, you're a screenwriter. Doesn't matter if it's sold. Doesn't matter if it got produced. You wrote it. That's it. That's what a screenwriter does. And this is the same thing. You just have to get over that trepidation of, is this as good as somebody else's? Because I'll tell you right now, it's not. It sucks. It's going to be crap. It's total shit. And you know what? Shit makes things grow. So just get in there and just start. I mean, I can't tell you when I started doing this and I started being outed for, being a novelist now. I can't tell you how many people came up to me and they were like, oh, I've got this great idea for a novel. And I love how, and they say it with that way. And it's sort of like, hey, we can commiserate because we're both writers. And I'm like, no, we're not. Like, because my ass sat down in a chair and I don't know how many freaking drafts I've had to go through. I can't tell you how many times I didn't want to look at it again. And I had to go back and I had to rewrite it. I was like, that's nothing. There's nowhere is that the same thing as I was sitting on the couch and I kind of had this vague idea in the back of my head, or I saw something. I was like, hey, I thought of that. It's like, yeah, okay. Shut up or shut up. I
Right.
mean,
Exactly. The world is full of those. I love this so much. Now, where can people get a hold of you if they want to connect with you? And most importantly, if they want to buy your book?
Sure. Okay. So if you want to buy the book, go to redemptionwindow.net. Apparently somebody bought.com. Seriously? I mean, like, what the hell? I mean, I just assume they're like window menu. In my paranoid dreams, someone is like, ooh, this is going to be a hot book. Let's go ahead and buy the URL so we can blackmail them and get the money back. Or you can just go to Amazon.com, look for Redemption Window, a novel, look for Cary DiCristina.
Thank you so much for doing this with me. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.